John
Pulse, like pulse.
with StraightUp Solar. We're going to hand it off, and we've got a presentation here, and then we're going to move outside and look at the solar house soon after. So
I know,
here we go.
tired of sitting, but there's a solar house outside, and we'll go out and walk around and show you more of the functionality of how solar gets integrated into one's home. So, quickly here. So a little bit about our company, StraightUp Solar, local based, formed in 2006. What's unique about our company is that we're a one-stop shop for solar. So we do all the design work, we carry our own electrical contractor's license, we have our own installers, electricians, everybody's done in-house. I really like to stress our values. It's an acronym that we have, clear values, that we use a lot internally: community first, leadership, advocate, environment, respect, excel in all that we do. I know this is kind of cycling through here pretty quick here. Sorry about this. Affiliations that we do. So a lot of ICEA is the Illinois Solar Energies Association. MOSIA is the Missouri Solar Energies Association. So from a policy standpoint, we've dedicated a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort to building the industry and getting it off the ground. Maybe you've probably seen solar in the last 2 years pretty much everywhere. You kind of have to sometimes have a solar eye for it, but the amount of growth, exponential, is an understatement for what has transpired over the last 2 years in St. Louis and Missouri in general. So, and then other affiliations, Solar Aid is a nonprofit agency. We did some of our employees went to Africa last year. It's a program that removes kerosene lamps, and then We Care Solar is more medical. It has to deal with maternity wards in Africa, so we go in and, babies come at all hours of the day, so if you're going to have a baby in the middle of the night, We Care Solar does solar kits for that. And then we just partnered with Wings of Hope this year. They're based out of Chesterfield actually, but they're kind of in the medical field as well, going to impoverished areas around the world and vaccinations, medical, whatever they need. But we're actually going to Nicaragua in March to install solar systems for free remote villages there. So we're having a big fundraising party at Urban Chestnut in the Grove neighborhood, and hopefully end of October. They have all their Oktoberfest going on right now, and we don't want to trounce over that, but our social media website will all have information to that. So a big kind of fundraising campaign to go down there. So how does it work? Pretty simple. So the first things we do when we look at any project is one, the address, and one, at least 12 months of usage data, your actual kilowatt hours consumption. It's pretty easy. It takes about 5 minutes to get this pretty much and say, okay, we've got open, unobstructed, shade-free area. We want southern exposure, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. A little over 80% of your production is going to come between those hours. So we look at that viable footprint, and then we can kind of drag and drop modules on the roof and say you can get 10 modules or you can get 50 modules. And then we look at your historical consumption just to compare. You're not really dramatically going to change your lifestyle too dramatic the way you've been living it, so you're pretty much going to keep consuming the same amount of energy. You might do energy efficiency upgrades, with Smart House and insulation, and we strongly recommend that. Anything, we typically size systems to do 40 to 80% of a home's power, because over the course of living in the house, you're going to do those subtle upgrades. You're going to replace, lights with LED lights. You're going to have more installations. You're going to seal it. Your AC unit might conk out 5 years from now. You're going to replace it with an Energy Star appliance. And when you started at 60% offset, now you're at 80, 90% offset. I know this is kind of frustrating here that this is just cycling. So here's the kind of basic functionality. It's really simple. You have solar panels on your roof. They produce DC power, direct current. That direct current goes into an inverter and converts it to alternating current. So you have solar panels, you have an inverter, and then we just basically backfeed into your existing electrical service. The idea is all about credits, right? So you want to during the day, it's a nice sunny day, you're building up all these credits, you're not at home, you're at work, you're doing something, you're out of the house isn't consuming anything, you come home at night, you turn on the TV, you cook, you do your laundry, you do whatever, and you deplete those credits. That's why looking at that usage information is so critical, those two pieces of information, that satellite image and 12 months of usage data, so we can kind of say, you know, in the summertime you might produce 80% of your house's power, but in the wintertime you miite produce 50% of the power, because the sun's always moving, it's always in different locations. But there's really good third party, the Department of Energy, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, that gives us this hard data that they've been collecting for decades now. So we're pretty much spot on what a system's going to produce for the customers. We're actually a company that's more conservative because the industry is still growing. The idea is that we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot and have a customer that's like, you know, I'm supposed to produce an extra 1,000 kilowatt hours, but my system's not. So it's a 1-to-1 kilowatt hour to kilowatt hour exchange. Even if roof space is no object and money is no object, and you say I want 500 solar panels up there, it's not a wise idea. Only look at solar as a form of reducing your operating expenses. It makes no sense to overproduce. If you overproduce for a month, Ameren's going to compensate you 2 cents per kilowatt hour roughly, when they're charging you currently about 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So no, don't look at solar as income generation, just lowering your operating expenses. So from a viability standpoint, people think, you know, St. Louis, does it work? Is there enough sunlight to produce power? And the answer is absolutely yes. If you step back and look at the whole globe and who's installing solar, Germany is pretty much number one. They're about 37% of all global installation capacity. But you look at an installation map, they get not a whole lot of sun, about 2 hours on average per day, whereas St. Louis is close to 4.7, 4.8 hours of noontime sunlight per day.
Even in the winter?
Winter will fluctuate, so summer is closer to 6, winter is closer to like 3, but what we do is we look at the full 12-month picture. But we can tell you, you know, based on your past history of usage data, how much of an impact that's going to make. Because some houses are all electric, some houses are electric and then gas, so it's very site specific. Sorry, these are good, important ones. So there used to be a rebate from Ameren, and it went away. There's a lawsuit pending, November 20th. There's actually a big event. I encourage anybody that's interested in solar to go to it. It's on Monday night from 5 to 8 at Urban Chestnut in the Grove, and it's the Missouri Solar Energies Association fundraising event. So every year we do it 2 or 3 times, and it raises awareness. You get to meet key people that are involved in the policy side of it, which I think is very important to be in right now. Whether you come from it from an environmental standpoint or a financial standpoint, it's just good knowledge to have and kind of what's going on with our utilities. A typical house for us that we see consumes about 14,000 kilowatt hours a year, and I try to refrain from talking kilowatt hours and watts to people. It makes more sense to talk about dollars and what that is, but a typical house spends about $1,400 a year on electricity. So a 5 kW system, which is anywhere from about 18 to 20 solar modules, or about 400 square feet, will do half of that.
How many solar modules?
18 to 20. So a 5 kW system will knock that in half. And this next little chart here is just our current world we live in from a pricing standpoint. And this can vary depending on complexity of the house and the component selection. But this is pretty much an average for a 5 kW system. Sorry. So you have a 30% federal tax credit. You used to have a rebate from Ameren, and the rebate from Ameren was flat out ridiculous. It was $2 a watt. So you have a 5 kW system, that's 5,000 watts. 5,000 times 2 is a $10,000 rebate check. So just factor that into there, and it's huge. And we knew that, we being the solar industry knew that 2 years ago, because what's happening is component prices are coming down, and it doesn't make sense to have a $2 watt rebate. So we've tried to work with the utilities to have it phased out gradually over a 6-7 year period, to kind of wean us off, so to speak. And that kind of fell into disrepair last year, but that's what the lawsuit November 20th is going to hopefully define for us. So pretty substantial. But if you just look at that scenario, energy inflation rates, so we pay about 10 cents a kilowatt hour right now, but next year, I apologize. Pause. Don't move. So we pay about 10 cents a kilowatt hour right now. On the national scheme, that's pretty darn cheap. California, you're close to like 23 cents a kilowatt hour. You go to Hawaii, you're paying 42 cents a kilowatt hour. So 10 cents is like dirt cheap. But you got to look at where our energy comes from currently. And for the state of Missouri, a little over about 83% of our power comes from coal-fired power plants. And the EPA has just swung in new regulations as far as emissions and retrofitting those to make those cleaner. So it's going to have a huge impact on Ameren because all of our power comes from coal. It costs money to mine it, costs money to transport it, costs money to burn it, costs money to remove it. It's just a huge, massive power plant that, you know, it needs work on it. So conservatively, 5% energy inflation rate is pretty conservative for St. Louis. Over the last 6-7 years, St. Louis or Ameren has averaged about 7% energy inflation rate per year. But you can see the difference here. So this first column on the left, or this first table on the top, is a 5% energy inflation rate. And what I did is basically year one is your production, and the system is going to degrade slowly over time. Most components, pretty much 99% of all components out there have a 25-year lifespan, 25-year warranty to them. So there's a small, about 0.5% degradation in the system over 25 years. But then you're currently at 10 cents a kilowatt hour for your energy. But next year, or 5 years from now, it's going to be 12 cents. And 5 years after that, year 10, it's going to be 15 cents. So you have to look at solar as a form of an investment. A lot of people say, what's the payback of it? And it's like, drives me nuts because it's pretty much the only payback question people have besides maybe buying a house. But like an irrigation system, people don't say, what's the payback on my irrigation system? Because you got to pay for the water, you got to pay for it to winterize it and summerize it, all that. So you got to look at it from a long-term perspective, and basically simple math, just multiply your production by a conservative estimate of what energy inflation rate is going to do, and you make a $12,000 investment, and you save $28,000. And if you want to go a little bit, higher on your energy inflation rate, we're only bumping it up 3% per year. You're looking at a substantially larger number. So if you get proposals, there's a couple key things to look at in comparing them, because it's really hard to compare apples to apples. It always seems like you're comparing apples to oranges. One of the big things is to really hone in on what their current cost per kilowatt hour energy is, what their energy inflation rate is, and what the system's going to produce. And then if you have a standardized methodology for different companies quoting you, you can begin to formulate and compare apples to apples. You got to just make sure that you got the same starting point from a cost per kilowatt hour from the utility, a pretty close production number. Production can vary depending on components, but it shouldn't vary too much, and then energy inflation rate. So
How much more is
About $12,000 if you have that much space.
So aesthetics is another big thing. Planning and zoning, neighborhood associations. I've been through the gauntlet. There's 90+ jurisdictions in St. Louis, and everybody's got their own path to putting solar on your house. I think it's great, but it's all in the eyes of the beholder. Historical preservations are big. Central West End, Solar, they don't want to physically see it, even though it's non-reflective, it's not shining light or anything. So
This neighborhood too.
yeah. And it's just, what it boils down to is just an educational barrier. Flat roofs are great because it's really not visible at all. You can either be ballasted or attached. Most systems are ballasted, which, just imagine a big erector set, concrete paver stones that weigh down the system. You have your modules that sit in the trays that get clamped to the trays, and you're pretty much ready to go. So, I've got a little solar house out here. I can tell you more about the functionality of it, but I appreciate the time. Sorry for the PowerPoint not behaving. But if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to stick around and answer them.
How do you figure out if you can't put that big a system up, whether it's worth the effort? I mean, if you can only put up 10
10 modules.
modules,
Hey, you have to, I look at solar as not the one-stop solve all my problems, eliminate, bring it down to zero. I think you have to do exactly what the energy efficiency, the insulation, the heating and cooling, the lights, you couple that all together. You might start with 10%, but you might get to 50% 5 years down the road. So 10 modules is a good system to start with. I mean, my house has got 12 modules on it, and it does about 50% of my house's power. And I'm still sealing and changing out light bulbs, and I'm still, my goal is to try to get to 75, 80% with just 12 modules. And I've got a wife and 2 kids, so just being cognizant and aware and incorporating energy efficiency, thermostats, all that. Any other questions?
John, quick question. So the lawsuit is about what? That Ameren can't go from a ridiculous $2 a, whatever you said, watt, to zero?
Right, so
And
what
that
happened?
It has to be a scaled back thing. So if you're successful, Ameren will reinstate some kind of a credit. It won't be the old credit, but it'll be
Well, the way it was,
multi-zero.
yeah, the lawsuit's basically about the 1% cost cap provision. So in that, there's a formula, and nobody's ever defined the formula of how it's calculated. Ameren's got their own calculation, the Public Service Commission's got their own calculation, the solar industry's got their own calculation, and nobody's really ever figured it out. So back in October, Ameren basically raised their hand and said, we hit our 1% cost cap. And then they had to file all that paperwork with the Public Service Commission. They had 60 days to review it and decide on it. The problem is that 58 days into it, the Ameren came to the solar industry and brokered a side deal. And they said, here's the bucket of money. When it's done, it's done. So the Public Service Commission never really ruled on it officially. They just, Ameren and the solar industry kind of sidebarred last minute to come up with this.
The original, you mean, rebate?
Right, the $2 watt rebate.
So now the solar industry gets to decide how the rebate is.
Public Service, well, the court does now. So there's a renewable energy standard for the state that 66% of Missouri voters voted for
Right.
that requires the investor-owned utilities to get more of their energy from a renewable energy source. And 15% is their goal. So it's, in order to do that and keep on track, you need some kind of incentive out there to push it along. But I don't think we're very too far away from, I mean, another year or two, even like $1 or 50 cents a watt for the next 2 years would have been sufficient, because soft costs and component pricing, all that's dropping. You're pretty darn close. I mean, there's the paradigm shift has happened in California. It's happened in Massachusetts. It's happened in, I would say, a dozen states where it's complete economical sense without any incentives, rebates whatsoever to just do it.
It's because the price of electricity is going up and the price of solar components are going down.
Right. Well, if you
So
exactly.
but most of the credits have gone to commercial rather than residential.
There was a cap on it. I don't know the exact number, but I mean, there was probably, Ameren has a graph on their website. I would say there was over 1,000 applications that went in December, at least. If you go back a year before that, I think there was like 20 applications. So like hyper growth, as I was saying,
Yeah.
is an understatement. Yeah,
And so in our, because we also have historic provisions, I mean, is there stuff like it can't be on the side facing the street? I mean, what are, like, I think we would be pretty lucky because our house faces north, so south would be good for us, but, I mean, is that some of the things you have to take into account in a historic district or?
Well, I mean, from a viability standpoint, we need southern exposure.
Right.
So if it's visible from the street, then it's, you know, we need more people to stand up and kind of, you know, be the first to say,
Right.
let's think about this planning and zoning committee. There was a big thing that caught a lot of attention in Solar where this guy was like, I'm for it, I'm putting it on my building, it's visible,
Right,
and this is a bunch of BS that I
Right.
can't do this on my building.
right,
There's solar rights acts in other states. Missouri was this close to formulating that to prevent.
but I mean, but until that happens, you have all the regulations and you know, like per neighbor, crazy 90 municipalities, what you have to do in each one.
Yep. Yeah, the idea is, I mean, I'm all for having some kind of, you know,
Aesthetic, right, yeah.
but don't paint it black and white.
Right.
You have to have some middle ground for people to incorporate it into their house. And that's partnering with a good company that,
But, so like today, if we wanted to do that, what is
Well,
it for our neighborhood? It can't be seen from the street?
can't be seen from the street.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think there's room for,
Right, but I mean, I think on our, we would be lucky because our house faces north, so southern would be our backyard. So we would be one of the lucky people.
I think some people also have looked at getting it put on their garage roof.
Oh,
I think if they have like a garage or a
Yeah,
carport or
yeah,
something and
detached
behind their
garages,
house in this
alleyways,
neighborhood.
you're fine.
Yeah.
Not
Because
like
the-
main.
If you go north on Belt, Bruce Jones has some on his roof,
Yeah.
but also on his garage.
Yeah, yeah, oh, like half and half,
Yeah, a lot of South City neighborhoods, like Hampton, you know, everybody's got a little bungalow house and then they have a detached
Garage,
two-car
yeah.
garage in the back.
Oh, we should go
I mean,
get
there's
house
a
before.
ton of installations.
But ours would be perfect, right? 'Cause